Glad you are all here. We are wrapping up our series on the traits of success here in August for the year, and we are looking at the topics of honesty and follow-through and talk about how those things lead to success in our life. Today, we're actually going to be looking at how we can, through being honest consistently in our words and actions, how through that we can find a life that has much less stress and a much simpler life. It just simplifies things for us in our lives. So we're going to start today looking at a comment that Jesus makes on his famous Sermon on the Mount. So Jesus has this huge sermon he gives, but in the midst of it, in chapter 5, he makes this one comment, and that's what I want to focus on this morning. Here's what it says, chapter 5, verses 33 through 36. He says this. He says, "You have heard that our ancestors were told, 'You must not break your vows, you must carry out the vows you have made to the Lord.' But I say, do not make any vows. Do not say by heaven, because heaven is God's throne, and do not say by the earth, because the earth is his footstool, and do not say by Jerusalem, for Jerusalem is the city of the great king. Do not even say by my head, for you can't turn one hair white or black." So what Jesus is saying here is he's going, hey, you guys know your parents, your ancestors, they all told you, hey, keep your vows. If you make a vow to God and people, make sure you keep them. And you do all these things. And I say, don't make vows at all. Just don't swear on this. Don't swear on that. Don't even swear on the hair on your head, because you can't even control that. So stop using that authority. And what you have is this. You have Jesus addressing these people who are living in a time where integrity is very hard to find amongst the common people and amongst the leaders, both the religious leaders and the political leaders. Now, does that sound familiar? Okay? Integrity is hard to find. And we live in a very similar society. As you've seen the reports on the Catholic Church and all that break again this week for like the 5th time. Again, we have a huge lack of credibility, just like the crowd that Jesus is talking to. Nobody really trusts anybody because we see everybody as failures and everyone's trying to play us and manipulate us and lie to us. And that's the type of people he's working with. So he's basically saying, because there's a short supply of integrity amongst your people, what everyone's doing is they're making oaths, they're swearing on things in order to basically give them credibility. So they go, since I know I have no credibility, if I swear maybe on heaven, or I swear on my life or my mother's life or something like that, or I swear to this thing or the authority of this thing, somehow that will give me credibility, because without them, I know you know I have no credibility. So they're living in this culture where people are constantly swearing on things, making oaths that give credibility where there is none. Now, this is a very familiar technique I'm sure we're all aware of. We see it happen in our lives all the time. For instance, when my parents, I was a senior in high school, got their first brand new car. So my entire life growing up, we grew up dirt poor. We always had these used cars we got. We'd go buy tires from like people's backyards, like old tires, and stick them on. But my parents, my senior year, my grandfather passed away, and he actually had a farm, so we actually got like decent money at that point, of course, when I was moving out. So it was not too long before I moved out, and my parents bought a Mercury Cougar. How many of you remember those cars? That was the exact car we owned. That's not the actual one, but I found it online. That's the exact car we owned. They bought this, our first brand new car. It was actually a fairly like sporty, quick car back then. It doesn't look sporty now. And I remember looking back then going, dude, this is like a sweet sports car. Now I look at it and go, ugh, okay? But at the time, it was a great car. And so 3 days after getting it, my parents let me take it out for the first time on my own. And I was supposed to just go to work, and I was supposed to come home with it. So I take it out, I go to work, I'm coming back to the house, and I'm on this road, and there's a car in front of me. I swear to you this happened. And I have to say swear because my parents didn't believe me either. I'm sitting at the road, the car in front of me peels out in front of me, and it throws a huge rock up from its tire, and it shoots across the hood, hits the windshield, and it literally gouges into the metal of the hood and takes like a 3-inch gouge out of it and puts a crack in the windshield. 3 days in owning this thing. So I drive home, and I'm like, you guys need to come look at the car. And my parents come out, my dad's ticked off. And he's like, what'd you do? I said, there's this car in front of me. I did nothing. He just peeled out in front of me and shot this rock up. It hit here. It hit here. You can see exactly how it hit. You can see it. And they would not believe me. So I'm sitting there going, I swear to you. I swear on everything that's whole. And why did I have to swear at that point? Because I lied to my parents all the time. Okay? So they didn't trust me at all. My brother happened to be back in college. I remember, so I don't know if it was in summertime or what it was. My brother was home. And I remember my brother coming out going, it looks like he ran into something, like a board or something. I'm like, would you shut up? And he's like, no, it looks like he ran into something and it hit there. He's probably being stupid with the car or something. I'm like, I'm going to kill you. So anyways, but I had to swear on things. Why? I had no credibility with my parents. They didn't trust a thing that I said, so I had to swear on things. Or take the person who's facing the loss of a loved one, and they have the prayer where they basically say, God, I swear an oath to you, God, if you would just come through on this prayer, I will serve you for the rest of my life. And they have that prayer where they're going, God, I make this oath. If you would just come through and spare their life, or you would help them out or answer my prayer, I will serve you the rest of my life. Now, why do people have to make that oath? They make that oath because they know they haven't been a servant of God's up till then. They know they haven't fulfilled what God has called them to be fulfilling in their life. So they have to swear an oath to God to let God know, I'm really serious this time. This is a credible thing I'm asking you of. So people give an oath in those moments. Or your boss gives you a new responsibility, or a responsibility he's tried to give you before, and you want to take it, so you swear to him that you can get it done. So, sir, I know I can get this done. I swear to you I will get this done. I will fulfill this. I'll make sure it's taken care of. Why do you have to swear in that instance? Well, you have to swear on something because you've already dropped the ball before, and they're going, I don't know if I can really trust you or not, so now you're having to use an oath or a swear to go, you can trust me this time. You have dropped the ball before, this time you can trust me. Or when your kid makes you pinky swear, after you tell your kid you're going to do something with them. So this is what Libby does now with me, is after she cons me into doing something, and I say, I'll get to it in a few minutes, she'll be like, pinky swear? So then I have to pinky swear, and we have to pinky swear. Well, now, why does she do the pinky swear? Because there's been some times she's asked me to do something, I forgot to do it and didn't fulfill it, so now she doesn't trust me all the time, so she'll be like, now pinky swear. And so I have to pinky swear. Why? Because I lost some credibility in that area of my relationship with her. Now, at the same time, I'm getting old and your memory starts to slip, and I've noticed she like tricks me at times, and she'll say I told her I was going to do something when I really didn't say I was going to do it. I just said I might get to that, or maybe we'll get to that, but she says I told her I would do it. Parents, have you had this happen? Do the kids do this to you too? Okay, so it's not just, okay, so my kid's manipulating me half the time too, and I don't know what's really going on. So I might be really credible, and she's making me out to be a liar. And that's what Liberty would probably do. So, okay, so that explains the pinky swear. But anyways, we have to do these things because we live in a society where people don't trust each other. There's no credibility. So we make these vows, we make these swears, we do these things because we understand people lack credibility, they don't trust us, so this is how we're going to convince them. This time we're going to get it done. So, what Jesus is saying to these new believers, he's saying this. He goes, I know you guys live in a society where there is no credibility, including yourselves. And he knows the people he's talking to. You don't have credibility either. So what you do is you're trying to convince each other with these vows, but here's what I'm telling you. I want you to do things different. Moving forward from this stage in your life, even though you don't have credibility right now, moving forward, I want you to start living differently. I want you to do things differently. So he says, don't make any vows. Don't make any commitments. And so is he really telling us this? That instead of making vows, just don't commit to anything or anyone. Just don't make any commitments. Go, I'm just not going to get committed to anything. I'm not going to. Of course not. That's not what he's telling us to do. He says this at the end of that passage I first read you. Verse 37, he wraps it up with this. He says, just say a simple yes, I will, or no, I won't. Anything beyond this is from the evil one. So Jesus' solution to not making vows is just simply be a person of integrity. If you say yes to something, people can go, I can take that to the bank. If you say no to something, people go, I can take that to the bank. It's trustworthy. I know when they say yes or no, they mean yes or no. They're credible. If you have to add anything else to your words, it shows that you have an integrity issue, which is a sin issue, which Jesus describes it comes from the evil one. So when you're having to add these other things to it, it's going, you understand you have a credibility issue. I don't want that for you. What he's saying is this, I want you to be better. I want you to be different. I want you to stand out in this world. I want you to be the light of the world. That's what Jesus is telling them. So what we need to look at today is this. How do we develop integrity in our words and actions before God and men in this world? So if you sit here this morning and you go, yeah, I don't have a lot of credibility. Yeah, I've let a lot of people down. Yeah, I lie from time to time. People don't trust my words. This morning what I want to look at is, well, how do we start building a life of integrity? How do we start turning that around to start being the people God called us to be? So I want to walk through 3 things we can do that would help us start to earn credibility amongst people and with God in our relationship with Him as well. These 3 habits, if we would learn them and start implementing them in our lives, would start to turn around our lack of credibility and turn us into people over time that people go, if he says yes, he means yes. If he says no, he means no. He doesn't need to say anything more. He doesn't need to add to it or take away from it. His yes is yes and his no is no. That's what he's trying to help us learn. So these are the 3 things I would encourage you to learn in your life. The first one is this. You need to learn how to own your failure in the moment you are confronted with your failure. All right? You got to learn how to own your failure in the moment you are confronted with your failure. Here's what happens in my life that I'm sure you've all experienced as well. Most of the time when people come to you about a failure you have, you know at the minute they open their mouth that you're guilty. All right? And you know you dropped the ball on something. And in those moments, you typically have one of 3 or 4 responses that you can give. And here are the ones and the choices that we usually make. In that moment, what we can do is this. We can blame someone else. Now, how many of you have done this or seen people do this? They blame someone else. So you know you dropped the ball. Someone comes to you and asks you about it, and you go, well, it was Susan. Susan over there, she did it. You need to go talk to her. I saw her yesterday, and yes, she was the one that did that. I don't know how it happened, but it was her. And what we do is we blame someone else. The other thing we tend to do is this. We blame something else. So we talk about a circumstance, or it was out of our control, or things went this way, and it wasn't really our fault. Circumstances demanded it was this way, and it's circumstances' fault rather than me. I wasn't the failure. It was just a situation I was put in. And so we blame the circumstances or that something over there. The other thing some people are good at is deflecting. Have you ever had the person you go confront on something, and they can deflect real well, and they like get you off on a different topic? And then you're like, how did I get over here, and why did I forget about this? And they're really good at deflecting. If you have children that does this, it drives you crazy because they never stick to the topic, and they're always trying to get you attached to something else. And if you're ADD, it works on you because then your kids can get you distracted. You get it over there, and then the conversation's over, and you're like, okay, have a good day. And then you walk off, and you're like, wait a second, we forgot to deal with that. Stupid kid. Then you're like, get back here. And then you have that conversation again, all right? So sometimes we deflect. Now, here's what God would have us to do, which is this. The other choice we have, the other option is to own it, to take responsibility for it. When someone comes to you and says, hey, and let's use my name, hey, Scott, you were supposed to do this, you didn't do this, or Scott, did you do this? And it's like a question type thing. The one choice we can do that God would be honored by and that we would start to build our integrity on is to own up to it and go, yeah, I dropped the ball on that one. That was my fault. I messed that one up. That was a bad decision by me. That was my fault. Yep, I shouldn't have done that one. That was all on me. And just own it. Instead of trying to cast off to someone else or talk about circumstances or deflect or whatever else, just go, hey, I'm going to own it. I did that. That's on me. And then use these words, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I failed. Okay? It's okay to be a failure. We're human beings. We all fail. We're all going to fail. So it's okay to own up to it and say, you know what, I'm sorry, I failed at that one. And even though you're admitting your failure, you're actually building your credibility, you're building your integrity because you're being honest. And through that honesty, you gain integrity. All right? So that's the first thing you need to learn is when you are confronted with a failure, own it in the moment. Don't try to cast it off somewhere else. The second thing I would encourage you to learn is this. Look at yourself as a root of failure before looking at other people or other circumstances. Okay? Look at yourself as the root of failure before looking at anybody else or any other circumstance and casting the blame off on them. Look inward first. We have conditioned ourselves a lot of times in this society today to believe that every failure we have is someone else's fault. All right? We have people literally walking through, and you run into them all the time, that literally believe the world is against them. That everything bad happening in my life is because the world's out to get me. Everybody's out to get me. Everyone's out to mess my life up. And a very helpful thing for you to do is to learn maybe you need to look at yourself first rather than casting doubt every place else and looking at everyone else. First, examine yourself and your role. I see this all the time. It cracks me up, but it infuriates me as well. Is this basketball team I coach in games? I will have a kid, and he will throw a pass away. and it was a horrible pass by one of my players. He'll throw it away where one of our kids wasn't. It leads to a turnover. It goes out of bounds. And I'll see my kid over there blaming someone else on the team. And he'll be like, well, he didn't go where he was supposed to go. And I'll pull him over. I'll be like, shut your mouth and stop being an idiot and pass the ball where you're supposed to pass it. It was on you. I'll have them literally every time there's a foul in a game, every kid denies it. It's like in jail. There's no criminals in jail, okay? Like everybody's innocent in jail. On a basketball court, every kid that fouls someone, it's never their fault. So I have this one, I won't mention his name, but I have this one kid on my team. Kid will go up for a layup. He comes across and just smacks him across the head, knocks him to the floor. They call a foul on him. He's like, I didn't touch him. And then I pull him over to the bench. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, well, I didn't touch him. That shouldn't have been a foul. I'm like, what are you talking about? You hammered the kid across the head. No, I didn't. I didn't touch him. Shut up and get on the bench, and I'll call someone else and put him out there. Constantly what you see on the basketball floor is these kids blaming other things rather than looking at themselves. They'll take a bad shot. It won't go in. And I'll hear the kids go, it's a basket's fault. That stupid room. It's the room. Or the basketball's not air. And I'm like, dude, those aren't living things. They're not out to get you. The basketball room and the basketball don't care about you. They're not trying to hurt you. They're not trying to mess up your shot. You just made a stupid shot. So make a better one next time. All right? That's what happens constantly. And we do the same thing in life. Is a lot of people, instead of owning their failure and all, what they do is they try to look at other people first rather than just going, hey, maybe the problem's on me. Maybe I'm the one at fault. Maybe I need to look inward at me and go, what's going on in my life that makes me make this decision or do this one? Maybe it's my problem, not everybody else's. And so this would be a great lesson of learning integrity, is that you would learn, instead of looking at someone else, to first look at yourself to go, maybe these are problems I have. Maybe the same issue I keep having in life isn't because of other people, it's because of me. Maybe it's not other people making bad decisions. Maybe I make bad decisions. Okay? And owning some of that and looking inward. The third thing that I would tell you will help you build your credibility, will help build your integrity, is this. Learn to admit your failures before being confronted with your failures or hoping that they just go away or they get swept under the carpet. Learn to admit your failures before being confronted with your failures or hoping it just goes away. This is probably the toughest of the three. This is what we tend to do. I failed, I hope no one knows. Or I failed and I hope no one confronts me. Or I failed and I hope it just kind of gets swept under the rug and people just kind of move on with it. And what I'm telling you today is what I would have you learn, and what I think Christ would tell you to learn, is when you realize you fail, be proactive and go and address it with people and apologize before they come to you. As a minister, this has been one I've had to work on. When you're in a role of leadership, oftentimes people don't want to come confront you and tell you you failed at something, okay? So what you will do, typically, you sit out there, you know how this works. Instead of coming to me, you'd rather just have it, well, it'll just go away and we'll just forget about it. So I don't want to go talk to the leader because that's kind of odd and uncomfortable, and I don't want to do that. And I understand that, being in that position. But what we have to learn to work on is this. A lot of you have had this conversation with me, where I have to come to you and apologize to you before you ever came and told me you had an issue. And I come to you and I'll say, you know what, I just need to apologize to you. I put you in a bad spot, or I made this decision. It was a bad decision. I did this and it hurt you. And when you realize you've done that to someone, learning how to go to them before they come to you and go, hey, can I talk to you for a second? You know what, I need to take ownership for something. I messed up. And that was bad. It was on me. It's not your fault. And I'm sorry I put you in that position. I'm sorry I put you in that light. I'm sorry that I did that to you, and I apologize. And taking ownership before they come to you builds a huge amount of credibility and integrity in your life before God and before people. Okay? It's a huge way of building, because what most people do is this. You don't realize this. They're not sweeping it under the rug. They're fully aware what you've done. All right? They just don't want to talk to you about it. So when you come to them and own up to it and admit it to them, people don't usually get angry at you. Usually they're going, wow, that's odd. That's different. You're someone that has integrity. And you start to change the opinion people have of you when you start doing that. Now, here's the thing. The number one thing that stops us from beginning the journey of a life of integrity, there's a big issue that prevents us from being people of integrity. And when we hear what God would have us to do in these things, that if you would learn these, there's this thing that becomes a stumbling block that makes us go, yeah, that sounds great, Scott, but, I'm not going to get there. And let me tell you what that stumbling stone is, what that thing is that trips us up. It's this. a belief that escaping immediate uncomfortableness is the most desired outcome in our lives. What I mean by that is this. A lot of us, when we're facing those situations where we're confronted with being a failure, our number one desire, our number one thing in life is just get out of trouble. We do this from the time we were children. How can I get out of this situation with the least amount of trouble and get out of here as fast as I can with the least amount of uncomfortableness? And that thing that we do as children carries over to when we're adults. And instead of becoming responsible people of integrity, we become people who flee situations, people who try to cover up situations, people who try to deny situations so we don't have to deal with them. And so what that does is it continues to destroy our credibility, because in the moment we think the most important thing is to just get out of the situation. And what I want to tell you is this: sometimes the most important thing for you to do is to sit in that situation, take ownership, be uncomfortable for a little bit, and start to change how people view you. All right, that becomes our biggest stumbling block, is we just want to be comfortable. We don't want to deal with the uneasiness of being confronted. And what usually happens when our number one desire is to avoid uncomfortableness is we usually lie, and that leads to a much more complicated lie to cover up for the first lie, and then that lie leads to another lie, and then we have all these different storylines going with different people to cover up different lies that we've told through our life, and before we know it, we have like 50 different lies that we're kind of keeping going with different people and different networks and different situations, and it becomes a very stressful, complicated life, and it's just entangled with stress everywhere. And so why I say the simpler path is integrity is because it takes all that away. If you become a person of integrity, if you start letting your yes be yes and your no be no, what happens is life becomes simpler. Life becomes much less stressful because you don't have all those things you're trying to keep in control of. As Jesus said in Matthew 34 and 37, he said this, but I say, do not make any vows. Just a simple yes, I will, or a no, I won't. Anything beyond this is from who? The evil one, all right? If you want to live a simpler life with dramatically less stress, take heart to what Jesus teaches us here. Work on becoming a person of integrity. Become a person whose word can be trusted and who can take ownership of their failures. God wants you to be better. God wants you to become a person that can be trusted with the words that you say. God wants you to stand out. God wants you to be the light of the world. And it starts by being someone who starts to become a person of integrity that makes us stick out in a world where that is greatly lacking. Would you pray with me? Heavenly Father,